In the early hours of a November morning, Mauricio Leal's elegant Bogota mansion was strangely quiet. Mauricio, a beloved stylist known for his charm and skill, had suddenly gone silent, missing important calls and a big appointment he wouldn't normally ignore. By midday, his friends and driver were growing uneasy. It wasn't like Mauricio to just disappear. When his brother Yonier arrived at the mansion, he was met with a shocking scene that would send ripples through Colombia. Both Mauricio and his mother were found lifeless. As details emerged, one pressing question lingered in everyone's mind. What happened inside Mauricio Leal's home on that fateful night? Mauricio Leal was born on November 25, 1973, in Cartago, Valle del Cauca, Colombia. From a young age, Mauricio was captivated by the world of beauty. As a child, he could spend hours mesmerized by the salons he passed by, although he didn't fully understand that this fascination would become a lifelong passion. His interest in beauty began to take shape when his mother, Marlene Hernandez, a woman who enjoyed learning new skills, decided to take a hairdressing course. Mauricio, around 10 or 11 years old at the time, begged his mother to let him attend with her. Although she initially told him he couldn't go because he wasn't enrolled, he didn't give up. Instead, he would watch her learn from outside the classroom, captivated by the artistry. Mauricio's early years, however, weren't easy. His parents often argued, creating a tense home environment. Influenced by this, some of his siblings got into trouble, though Mauricio managed to stay focused. At just 15, he urged his parents to consider separating, believing that constant conflict wasn't beneficial for anyone. When his father heard that Mauricio had suggested the separation, he taunted him, questioning who would take care of his mother and siblings. Mauricio didn't respond with words. He resolved to show through his actions that responsibility and resilience were not defined by anyone's expectations. Determined to support his family, Mauricio left Cartago and moved to Cali. He found a modest room and took on various jobs, from packing goods to delivering food on his bicycle, all while continuing his studies, often sleeping only 4 hours a night. Despite these challenges, Mauricio maintained a positive outlook. One day, in a conversation with a woman at his aunt's church, he shared his passion for hairdressing but explained that financial responsibilities kept him from pursuing it fully. By a stroke of luck, the woman knew someone who owned a salon and offered to introduce Mauricio. At just 16, Mauricio began working at the salon. Without experience, he started with basic tasks: sweeping, cleaning, serving coffee, and running errands. After some time, he gathered the courage to tell the salon owner he knew how to cut hair, a claim he wasn't entirely confident about. The owner challenged him to prove it by cutting his own hair. In that moment, Mauricio, though inexperienced, showed his natural talent, impressing the owner and securing a role as a stylist. Mauricio's popularity grew rapidly. Some clients were initially skeptical, seeing him in his school uniform, but word of his skills quickly spread. Within just 7 months, Mauricio became the most sought-after stylist in the salon, allowing him to provide a better life for his mother and siblings. His older brother, Yonye, often heard their mother express pride in Mauricio's hard work. By 1995, at 22, Mauricio was well regarded in Cali, known not only for his haircuts but also for his high-level makeup skills. Long waits to see him became common. Tired of not receiving the credit and pay he deserved, he decided to open his own salon, naming it Mauricio Leal. Though he faced challenges with expenses, starting with just a plastic chair and a borrowed mirror, clients filled his new salon within a weekend. Soon the demand became so high that Mauricio had to hire his first employee, his brother, Yonye. He taught Yonye the skills and hard work required in the trade, marking the beginning of Mauricio's career as both a stylist and a business owner, all while building a legacy that would carry his name forward in the beauty industry. Within just a month of opening, Mauricio Leal's salon saw a rapid expansion. One of the salons where Mauricio had previously worked went out of business after he left, as his departure caused a sharp drop in clientele. As a result, former employees from that salon, along with others from different salons, began asking Mauricio for work. In a matter of months, his team grew to 35 employees. His salon was now equipped with high-end tools, and Mauricio, along with his family, enjoyed a level of prosperity they once thought unreachable. Yet Mauricio's ambition continued to drive him. Feeling that Cali was becoming too small for his aspirations, he packed his belongings and headed to Bogotá, Colombia's economic powerhouse, determined to establish himself as one of the country's top stylists. In Bogotá, Mauricio humbly started by working in a friend's salon, and he quickly gained recognition. Several of his former clients from Cali, now professional models and TV presenters, chose him over other stylists in the capital. Within 3 months, Mauricio opened his second salon, this time in one of Bogotá's prime areas, further solidifying his growing reputation. Despite his fame and success, Mauricio never forgot his roots or his family. His mother, Marlene, was his pride and joy, and he treated her to a lifestyle of luxury, complete with vacations, yacht trips, and champagne toasts. However, Mauricio's success cast a contrasting shadow over his siblings. His half-brother Carlos Andrés, sadly, was serving a sentence in a maximum security prison for a serious crime. Meanwhile, his older brother, Yonye, had also opened a salon, thanks to Mauricio's guidance. Although Yonye managed to establish his business, he never achieved the same level of success as Mauricio, leading to resentment. In the midst of facing his own difficulties, including a divorce, Yonye asked to move in with Mauricio. Mauricio, ever generous, agreed. Despite the demanding nature of his work, which caused him severe thoracic and back pain, Mauricio managed his condition with pain relief medication, even resorting to morphine when the pain became unbearable. Over the years, he learned to live with it, but a tragic event would soon overshadow any efforts at improvement. On Monday, November 22, 2021, Mauricio's career was at its peak. That morning, he was scheduled for an important meeting with representatives from the Miss Universe pageant, where he was set to negotiate a contract that would place him on an international stage. However, when the representatives arrived at his salon, Mauricio was nowhere to be found. Concerned, Karen, who was the daughter of Mauricio's trusted driver, José Jair Ruiz, reached out to her father. Jair, who was like a brother to Mauricio, shared that Mauricio had messaged him that morning, saying he wanted to sleep a bit longer. By 2 p.m., the absence became alarming. Karen's calls to both Mauricio and his mother went unanswered, and each attempt seemed to be met with someone hanging up. Growing increasingly worried, Jair contacted Yonye, who was living with Mauricio at the time, to ask if he had any information. Together, they went to Mauricio's residence in La Calera, a luxurious residential complex. Familiar to the security guards, they entered without issue. Upon entering, they found the home in a seemingly normal state, no signs of violence or theft. However, an ominous feeling overcame Jair when he tried to open the master bedroom door, which was locked. When he received no response, he climbed outside to a window overlooking the garden. To his surprise, the window wasn't locked, and upon entering, he was met with a devastating sight. Blood covered the scene, with Mauricio lying lifeless on the bed, a knife still embedded in his body. Beside him was the body of his mother, Marlene, in an equally tragic state. Yonye rushed in after hearing Jair's screams. Shocked and horrified, he knew immediately that his brother and mother were gone. Fighting the impulse to approach the bodies, Yonye urged Jair to step back to avoid contaminating the scene. Initial speculation pointed to a murder-suicide, especially when police found a note signed by Mauricio reading, "I love you. Forgive me. I can't take it anymore." Although the letter seemed genuine, the scene itself suggested otherwise. Mauricio's body was positioned with a knife in his abdomen, still held by his hands, alongside several pills on the nightstand, which at first glance appeared to support the theory of a suicide. However, a closer inspection by investigators led to a different conclusion. This was not a case of suicide, but rather a carefully staged double homicide. Mauricio's body bore 4 deep stab wounds to the abdomen, each with significant force, which immediately aroused suspicion. Typically, someone attempting to end their own life would seek a quick and less painful method. Analyzing the wounds, experts suggested it would be nearly impossible for Mauricio to inflict such deep injuries on himself repeatedly. The idea of someone inflicting a fatal wound, pulling out the knife, and repeating this multiple times seemed highly unlikely, especially given the considerable strength required. Additionally, Mauricio was right-handed, making it improbable that he could deliver such force consistently to that part of his body. Adding to the suspicion were the numerous bruises on Mauricio's forearms, indicative of a struggle, as though he had tried to fend off an assailant. Speculation soon arose regarding a potential motive, including theories about criminal connections. Some believe that Mauricio's business success and income sources might have attracted the attention of criminal organizations, given his prior involvement in a scandal when he was linked to the Clinton List, a blacklist for those suspected of laundering drug-related money. Years before, Mauricio had partnered with a wealthy client to open a salon in Miami, which later failed. The client was later revealed to be associated with the family of a notorious cartel leader. Consequently, authorities temporarily froze Mauricio's assets and accounts. Although he eventually recovered, this past incident fueled theories about his death potentially being a targeted attack. However, doubts emerged regarding this theory. If a criminal organization had been involved, it seemed unlikely that they would leave no trace of forced entry in Mauricio's heavily guarded residence or resort to using a knife instead of a firearm. The brutal nature of the wounds, particularly those inflicted on his mother Marlene, suggested personal anger, as the injuries were far too severe to be random or impersonal. The case soon gained media attention, with television programs exploring Mauricio's life and interviewing those who knew him, including his loyal driver, Jair Ruiz. Jair, visibly shaken in interviews, had discovered the bodies and faced intense scrutiny from Mauricio's older brother, Yonye. Yonye, in contrast, exhibited a puzzling demeanor following his brother's death. In interviews, he expressed a sense of duty to carry on Mauricio's legacy, remarking that, "There's no use in being sad. Mauricio would want us to continue." Yet his statements and actions raised suspicions, as he appeared to claim Mauricio's accomplishments and possessions as his own, even wearing his brother's white jacket in multiple public appearances. In one interview, Yonye inadvertently referred to Jair as "my driver," catching himself with an awkward correction to clarify Jair had actually been his brother's driver. As time went on, public opinion diverged. Some saw Yonye as innocent, while others believed his calculated statements were rehearsed. The police were initially criticized for their perceived slowness, but on January 15, 2022, Yonye was arrested in Bogotá on charges of double homicide. He was carrying a large sum of cash at the time, suggesting he might have planned to flee or use his newfound inheritance for a lavish lifestyle. The arrest stunned the nation, but even more shocking was Yonye's eventual confession at the Attorney General's office. In court, Yonye delivered a carefully worded statement. "I have made a very personal and important decision, freely and voluntarily, to accept the charges through an agreement with the prosecutor's office. I extend my sincerest apologies to my family, my children, the victims, and all of Colombia for these events." His admission, however, was laden with euphemisms, referring to Mauricio and Marlene only as the victims and distancing himself from any emotional connection. For many, Yonye's lack of empathy explained why he had never achieved Mauricio's level of success. Unlike his brother, he lacked Mauricio's humanity and kindness. The confession seemed to conclude the case, but a sudden twist reopened the investigation. Under Colombian law, a guilty verdict does not guarantee a severe sentence, with potential outcomes ranging from a life sentence to a mere year in prison or even a fine. In Yonye's case, his initial trial declared him innocent, only for a subsequent trial to find him guilty. As the legal process unfolded, the public awaited the final sentence, knowing that in Colombia, the outcome could mean either justice served or an unexpected release. On April 22, 2022, in a courtroom appearance, Yonye made a surprising statement. "Today, I feel clearer and more aware. With this newfound clarity, I can firmly say I acted under pressure, and yesterday I made the decision, which I shared with my family, to renounce this prejudice. I've said it before and will say it again, freely and sincerely, I am innocent. My life has been dedicated to serving my family, my children, and society." Yonye had claimed innocence from the beginning, even after receiving threats against himself and other family members. Interestingly, Jair, Mauricio's driver, also faced backlash, despite the fact that he had neither been present at the residence when the murders occurred nor possessed a key to the home, both conditions that applied to Yonye. The pieces of the case began to come together as more details surfaced. 4 months before the murders, Yonye had moved in with Mauricio, who had always lived with their mother. Many believe that Yonye had already planned the tragic events long before moving in. By this time, Yonye was nearly 50, facing mounting debts from his struggling salon business and feeling increasingly isolated from his own family. His life, he realized, was on a downward spiral, while Mauricio's success and prominence only continued to grow. From this twisted perspective, Yonye saw himself in Mauricio's shadow, resentful of his younger brother's success and apparent favoritism within the family. Though Mauricio was generous with him, even asking for small favors with a cautious tone, likely knowing Yonye's volatile temperament, the relationship remained strained. The evening before the murders, Yonye attended a family gathering, later making a point to emphasize that he had been out and that Mauricio and their mother had not left their rooms. Security records later confirmed his movements in and out of the complex. Around 9 p.m., while Yonye was out, Mauricio sent what would be his final voice message to his brother. The message was simple, asking Yonye to pick up some cookies, but Mauricio's tone seemed unusually cautious, as if aware of his brother's temper. At 11 p.m., Yonye returned to the mansion and claimed he left the cookies on a table without speaking to his family before heading to bed. Throughout his statements, Yonye maintained a detached attitude, repeatedly suggesting that the murders happened while he was asleep. When confronted with evidence that the murders likely took place in the early morning, he claimed he'd taken valerian drops for a deep sleep and left for work the next morning without seeing anyone. Given the mansion's high security, it would have been nearly impossible for an outsider to enter without Jair's help. Mauricio often shared that he was close to his mother and trusted friends, but if a family member displayed questionable behavior, he had no problem distancing himself. Tensions with Yonye had escalated over money, with Mauricio's refusal to lend him more reinforcing that Yonye had no direct claim to his wealth. After the murders, police noted several oddities in Yonye's behavior. Around 11 a.m., he was captured on security footage leaving the mansion, and shortly after, sending a voice message to Marlene's phone, a bizarre move that many saw as either a mocking gesture or a twisted attempt at covering his tracks. He even sent out goodbye messages to Mauricio's contacts, pretending to be his brother, a revelation that further unsettled investigators. Security footage from the residential complex confirmed that Yonye was in the mansion from 11 p.m. until 11 a.m. the following day, which coincides with the estimated time frame of the murders. A neighbor reported hearing Marlene shout that night, "Yonye, enough, I'm tired of this." To which Yonye allegedly responded, "Mom, always with the same thing." It's believed that shortly after this confrontation, Yonye attacked his mother first. The fact that the murders were committed with kitchen knives from the home further suggested that the culprit was someone who lived there, highly unlikely to be a hitman, as professionals don't typically arrive unarmed and rely on improvised weapons. Curiously, Marlene sustained far more injuries than Mauricio, particularly in her abdomen, leading some to speculate that Yonye harbored deep resentment toward his mother. These wounds were possibly symbolic, a way for him to express anger over being brought into a world where he felt unloved. Despite planning the attack meticulously, Yonye's choice of a knife suggested a desire to carry out his revenge personally, wanting to feel every moment of control and anger firsthand. An analysis of Mauricio's body revealed high levels of clonazepam in his system, a sedative that can cause drowsiness and confusion, raising the possibility that Yonye had administered a significant dose to incapacitate him. Though Mauricio didn't reach a comatose state, the drug likely left him severely disoriented. Additionally, investigators discovered a pre-written suicide note, suggesting that Yonye had intended to frame Mauricio from the start. Yonye reportedly forced Mauricio to sign the note, which was left at the crime scene. After committing the murders, Yonye, using gloves to avoid leaving fingerprints, staged the scene to make it appear as a suicide. The housekeeper, upon arrival to help with the investigation, noticed that cleaning supplies were not in their usual place, and there were traces of blood on the stairs, suggesting that Yonye hadn't managed a thorough cleanup. At 11 a.m., Yonye was captured on camera leaving the mansion. Mauricio's driver, Jair, received an unusual message that morning, purportedly from Mauricio, instructing him not to send the housekeeper because he wanted to sleep. The message seemed suspicious because Mauricio habitually ended messages with "baby," especially with trusted friends like Jair. Additionally, several of Mauricio's contacts received voice messages that sounded like a farewell. Investigators later confirmed these recordings were actually made by Yonier, impersonating his brother. The final question remained: how long would Yonier face in prison? Officially, he could be sentenced to up to 50 years, though experts believed he might receive closer to 30, with some speculating a potential reduction to 15 years due to his claims of coercion. Further leniency could come from good behavior, potentially cutting his sentence even shorter. Despite common delays in such cases, Yonier's lawyer faced criticism for excessive stalling, even receiving threats for the audacious postponements. Throughout this process, Yonier showed little remorse. Many speculated that his only regret was not executing the plan more effectively to avoid capture. His resentment toward Mauricio stemmed from feeling overshadowed, as he had often relied on the reputation of being Mauricio Leal's brother to attract clients, yet struggled with debts as his own salon never thrived. After Mauricio's death, the question arose: what would happen to his estate? His assets, valued at over $1 million, officially passed to his half-brother, Carlos Andrés Garcia, who remains in prison with a release date estimated around 2030. Without a direct heir capable of managing his business empire, Mauricio's salons were closed. The case has captivated the nation, sparking countless theories and speculation. With each new revelation from lawyer Elmer Montaña, the complexity and murkiness of unraveling the truth become ever clearer. A recently uncovered video found on Mauricio Leal's phone has sent shockwaves across the country. In the clip, Mauricio appears distressed, seemingly forced to take the blame for his mother's murder as her lifeless body lies beside him. This shocking evidence surfaced long after the crime, which originally took place in November 2021, shedding new light on a story that only seems to grow darker as more details emerge. Thanks for tuning in to Unreal True Crime. If you're intrigued by mysteries from around the world, check out our new channel, Latin Crimes, where we dive into the gripping true crime stories of Latin America. Don't miss out. Subscribe now for more thrilling investigations. One quiet night in October 2023, a 13-year-old boy made a shocking 911 call that left the Hialeah, Florida, community stunned. His voice was shaky and full of fear as he admitted to something terrible that had just happened in his home, a crime that no one could have expected. With his newborn sister asleep in the next room and his stepfather far away, the boy's confession started an investigation that uncovered dark and surprising details about what took place that night. But why did this young boy do such a terrible thing? And could there be more to the story? The truth is much more complicated than it seems. Irina Garcia, born around 1984, was of Cuban descent and moved to Miami, Florida, with her mother. While not much is known about her early life, she later married Jose Rosa, a man serving in the military, and they welcomed their first child, Derek Rosa, on August 26, 2010. Although Irina and Jose eventually divorced, they maintained a friendly co-parenting relationship. Derek spent weekdays with his mother and stayed with his father every other weekend. He also had a strong bond with his maternal grandmother. Derek grew up as a respectful and well-behaved child, known for his academic achievements and strong character. He was a student at Mater Academy, excelling in his studies, and had dreams of becoming an engineer in the U.S. military. As time passed, Irina found love again with Frank Ramos, a fellow Cuban who worked as a long-distance truck driver. The couple moved into an apartment in Hialeah, Florida. In 2023, Irina became pregnant with her second child. A few days before giving birth, the family captured their joy in a photo shoot, celebrating the upcoming arrival of their daughter, Ashley, born in late September of that year. By all accounts, Irina was a warm and kind person, creating a harmonious and loving home. However, on October 12, 2023, just days after Derek's 13th birthday, their lives were shattered. That day, Derek made a shocking 911 call confessing that he had killed his mother with a knife. His voice was filled with fear and hesitation during the 17-minute call as he tried to explain to the dispatcher what had happened. He revealed that he was home alone with his mother and his 14-day-old sister who was asleep in her crib. Frank, his stepfather, was away on a trip, testing a truck outside the city. During the call, Derek mentioned that his stepfather had 2 firearms, one of which was in the apartment. After committing the crime, Derek had briefly considered using one of the guns to harm himself, but ultimately decided against it. He also revealed that he had spoken to a friend about the incident, a detail that left authorities stunned and raised more questions. When asked by the dispatcher why he had attacked his mother, Derek provided an answer that was not publicly disclosed. Throughout the call, the dispatcher worked to keep him calm and occupied, while officers traced his location and rushed to the scene. As police approached the home, the tension increased, and the dispatcher urged Derek to keep his hands empty and move away from any weapons. When officers arrived, Derek peacefully surrendered and was taken into custody while neighbors recorded the scene. Inside the home, police found a gruesome sight, Irina's body, lying on the bed covered in blood. Beside her, the newborn baby slept peacefully, unharmed. The infant was later placed in the care of her maternal grandmother. That same night, Derek was interrogated by the Hialeah police. Despite the gravity of his actions, he remained calm and composed during the questioning. He confessed that after going to bed around 10 p.m., he had woken up just after 11:30 p.m., gone to the kitchen, grabbed a knife, and entered his mother's room. While Irina slept next to her baby, Derek attacked her.
What type of knife was it, do you know?
It was just a big size kitchen knife.
That big?
Yeah.
What did you do with the guns?
I grabbed the gun.
Okay.
I pulled back to slide, but I didn't want to shoot myself.
Okay.
I intended to shoot myself before, but I couldn't.
Why did you kill your mother? Do you know?
If I had to say it now,
Yeah, get it off your chest. Absolutely.
I can't wait for a lawyer.
During the interview, Derek detailed the bloodstains on his shirt and hands, explaining they were from the attack. He even demonstrated the size of the knife he used, describing how he first targeted her neck, believing it was a vulnerable spot. During Derek's interrogation, as seen in the video footage, he appeared calm while answering detectives' questions. He admitted that before committing the crime, he had insulted his mother in Spanish. The first stab had startled her, and she only managed to scream once before falling silent. However, Derek's demeanor changed significantly when a detective asked about his reasons for killing his mother. He requested to use the bathroom and then remained quiet for a few moments. He finally questioned whether he needed to answer that question at that time and asked for a lawyer, bringing the interrogation to a close. The forensic examination of Irina revealed a total of 46 wounds, many inflicted on her face. Additionally, the investigation of Derek's phone uncovered disturbing images that horrified those who saw them. Not only had Derek contacted a friend to tell him about the crime, but he had also sent 3 photographs, 2 of his deceased mother and 1 of himself posing for a chilling selfie with blood on his hands. The friend, whom Derek mentioned both in his 911 call and later to detectives, was someone he had met through online gaming when he was 10 years old. They had never met in person and communicated mostly on weekends. Derek didn't even know his real name, referring to him only by the alias Sweden, which was saved in his phone. The search history on Derek's phone revealed unsettling queries before the crime, such as how to kill someone with a knife, the most effective method to do it, and where to target the body for the quickest result. Authorities noted that Derek had specifically researched the jugular vein. As the sole suspect in his mother's murder, Derek was taken into custody, while investigators confirmed that his stepfather, Frank, had been out of state at the time of the incident, working in Georgia. The community was left in shock, struggling to comprehend how a promising young boy could become entangled in such a tragic event. Neighbors and friends expressed disbelief, remembering Derek as a polite and dedicated student. His family requested privacy as they mourned the loss of Irina. A Hialeah police spokesperson revealed that Derek had been a model student, with no previous issues at home or school. He had no known history of mental health problems that could have explained his actions. On October 27, 2023, the authorities announced that Derek would face a charge of first-degree murder and would be tried as an adult. His request for house arrest under the supervision of his father and grandmother was denied, and he was transferred to the Metro West Detention Center in Doral. Due to his age, he was kept isolated from the general prison population and monitored 24/7, as he was considered a danger to himself. Despite the overwhelming evidence, some rallied in Derek's defense, including his family. His father described him as a respectful student and was baffled by what could have driven his son to such an act. Having served in the military for 22 years, he believed he had instilled strong values in his child. Derek's maternal grandmother referred to him as the best boy in the world, urging people not to misunderstand the situation, as no one knew him better than she did. A campaign, titled Save Derek Rosa, was launched online, garnering over 23,000 signatures in support of the teenager. The petition raised doubts about Derek's involvement, suggesting that his search history might have been manipulated or that someone else could have used his device. There was also suspicion that Derek, whose first language was English, might not have written the Spanish search terms found on his phone. Some claimed there was a second voice heard during Derek's 911 call and demanded further investigation into other family members, particularly Frank. Although Frank was never a suspect, many speculated about his involvement. Some accused him of manipulating Derek, and rumors about Frank's personal life sparked public interest. Speculation arose that Frank had a second family in his home country, with photos surfacing online showing him with another woman and 2 girls. However, no concrete evidence linked him to a hidden past. After the crime, Frank opposed the defense's request to search the apartment, claiming that Derek's father and other relatives had already removed several items. The prosecution supported Frank's decision, though this refusal added to public suspicion. Frank's lack of public statements further fueled conspiracy theories, with many wondering about his whereabouts following the incident. On December 14th, the trial began. Derek's grandmother, father, and other relatives attended, and several testimonies were given in defense of the teenager. The defense lawyers argued for Derek's transfer to a juvenile detention center, stating that his rights were being violated by keeping him in an adult facility, given that he was a minor. Prosecutors, on the other hand, argued that Derek's current situation ensured he received an education while incarcerated. Testifying in his favor were a counselor and 2 teachers who provided him with personalized lessons to help him continue his high school education. Although the teenager spent around 20 hours a day confined in his cell, he had limited interactions. He met with his math teacher 3 times a week and had language classes for another 3 hours each week. The prison housed 34 other minors, but Derek, being the youngest at 13, had restricted interactions, limited to brief periods of playing soccer and basketball with a single other inmate. Derek's math instructor testified that the boy responded to lessons just like any other student. Meanwhile, his language teacher noted that Derek often expressed confusion during lessons, leading her to suspect he had learning difficulties. However, she also emphasized that Derek was polite and a diligent student. Derek's attorneys argued that he had lost 6 pounds during his first few months in detention. They called a forensic psychologist to testify, although the psychologist had not personally evaluated Derek. The specialist attributed Derek's weight loss to depression caused by isolation and testified that Derek was likely experiencing severe self-harm tendencies, which were not visibly apparent. The psychologist also suggested that Derek could be on the autism spectrum and recommended that he be treated as if he had autism until proven otherwise. The Correctional Health Services psychologist diagnosed Derek with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder and confirmed that he had tendencies towards self-harm. It was notable that this was the first mention of Derek potentially being on the autism spectrum. Up until that point, he had not been diagnosed with any such condition, and his school records from the past 8 years had shown no signs of any deficiencies. Investigators who interacted with Derek in the hours following the crime also testified during this hearing, and the disturbing video of his confession was shown to the court. This was one of the few moments when Derek lowered his head and appeared to cry. Additionally, the state attorney's office released 2 new security videos as evidence. In the first video, Derek is seen opening the door to the apartment where his mother Irina is seated, holding the newborn baby. According to some sources, there was an argument between them. The second video shows Derek standing by his mother's bed as she slept, moments before her life was taken. The court also viewed photographs of the crime scene, including the weapon used. With these grim details, prosecutors aimed to prevent the judge from authorizing Derek's transfer to a juvenile detention center, insisting that he posed a danger to the community. After several days of testimony, the judge expressed concern over the relatively small amount of time Derek was allowed outside his cell but found no clear violation of his constitutional rights. As a result, the defense's request for a transfer to a juvenile facility was denied, and the judge ordered Derek to remain in the adult detention center. In an emotional hearing on Thursday, February 15th, defense attorneys presented 26 letters written by family members, all emphasizing that Derek was a kind, loving child and that the crime did not reflect his true character. The courtroom was filled with tension and hope as the letters were read aloud, highlighting the deep emotional impact of the situation on Derek's family and supporters. Derek's grandmother, father, and other family members attended the hearing, their faces filled with concern and love. Supporters from different parts of the United States had also traveled to be there, wearing T-shirts emblazoned with "Save Derek." Their presence was a powerful display of unwavering support for the young boy. Many in attendance echoed the sentiment that a child is innocent until proven guilty, and they firmly believed Derek Rosa could not have committed such a heinous act. His maternal grandmother emphasized that Derek was not an adult, but still a child who needed guidance. His biological father pleaded for leniency and a second chance to help Derek grow and learn from his mistakes. Both underscored the strong family support surrounding him. The letters submitted on Derek's behalf mostly asked the court not to treat him as an adult in the legal process. Derek's defense team argued that they were not prepared for trial because the prosecution had not provided all the necessary evidence. They pointed out key missing elements such as witness reports, footage from the baby monitor, clothing, and other personal items. Derek's attorney requested a court order forcing the prosecution to hand over the missing evidence or to exclude it from the case if it wasn't produced by a specific deadline. However, the prosecution had also been unable to access data from Derek's computer, tablets, and gaming consoles. The judge overseeing the case confirmed that there were 750 photos and multiple witness statements involved and ordered the prosecution to submit all unedited information. A new hearing date was set, but the judge maintained his decision to try Derek as an adult. Despite the judge's expressed urgency to expedite the trial, citing concerns about Derek's conditions in detention, the case became tangled in a series of hearings and delays. Throughout the proceedings, the defense petitioned for Derek to be declared indigent, arguing that the family lacked the financial resources to afford private attorneys. They requested that the state cover the costs for case preparation, including mental health experts, forensic analysis, and witness testimonies. At the most recent hearing, held on September 21, 2024, Derek appeared virtually and remained silent. His family broke down in tears upon seeing him on the screen, overwhelmed with emotion and pain. Concerned about the lengthy periods Derek spent in isolation, his lawyers once again petitioned to transfer him from the adult jail to a juvenile detention center. According to news reports, March records indicated that Derek had only been out of his cell for a total of 119 hours, with just 5 hours devoted to his education. Despite these revelations, the judge denied the request once again. New developments emerged when the prosecution identified Derek's mysterious online friend from the night of the crime. Through electronic device analysis, detectives traced the phone's owner and conducted an interrogation. Derek's trial is scheduled for December 2, 2024, with at least 28 witnesses expected to testify. The prosecution plans to present video testimony from Sweden, Derek's online friend. Meanwhile, the defense has reportedly obtained text messages between the Hialeah police detectives and Derek's stepfather, which could shed light on their relationship and whether any influence or manipulation took place before the crime. This ongoing investigation focuses on official information, witness statements, and family accounts. As the case is still unresolved, we refrain from making any judgments regarding Derek's innocence or guilt. Thanks for tuning in to Unreal True Crime. If you're intrigued by mysteries from around the world, check out our new channel, Latin Crimes, where we dive into the gripping true crime stories of Latin America. Don't miss out. Subscribe now for more thrilling investigations. It was a seemingly ordinary morning in March when Jason Wesh dropped off his 3-year-old daughter, Hannah, at her nanny's house, just like he had done many times before. Hannah, full of innocence, gave her father a kiss goodbye and walked into the home of Lindsay, a woman Jason trusted with his child's care. But within hours, everything changed. Jason received a frantic call from Lindsay. Hannah had collapsed. Paramedics rushed the little girl to the hospital in critical condition, but the explanations didn't add up. How could a seemingly minor fall lead to such a dire situation? As the hours passed, doctors made a chilling discovery about Hannah's injuries, raising more questions than answers. Something terrible had happened that morning, but the truth was far more shocking than anyone could have imagined. Hannah Wesh was born on January 11, 2015, in the city of Cincinnati, Ohio. From the moment she came into the world, she faced many challenges. Hannah was the daughter of Jason Wesha and Adrienne Latham, a woman struggling with heroin addiction who was involved in drug dealing. Despite her substance abuse, Adrienne sought medical help for her unborn child's well-being once she discovered she was pregnant. She underwent methadone treatment, which ultimately saved Hannah's life, though the baby was born with the same addiction her mother battled. Shortly after Hannah's birth, Adrienne was incarcerated due to her ongoing struggles with drugs. Hannah was left in the care of her father, Jason, who already had 2 daughters from a previous relationship. When Hannah was just 4 months old, Jason lost his job. With few options, he moved in with his brother, who was also facing tough times. Hannah was able to stay inside the house, but Jason had to sleep in his car because there wasn't enough room for him. This difficult situation lasted nearly 2 years until Jason found stable work in construction in Hamilton, Ohio. He rented a small house, and it seemed like life was starting to improve for him and his 2-year-old daughter. However, there was still a major hurdle. He needed reliable childcare while working long hours. One of Jason's co-workers, Timothy Smith, lived on the same street. Timothy and his partner, Lindsay Parton, had 2 daughters, aged 4 and 3. Recognizing Jason's struggle to balance work and caring for Hannah, Timothy suggested that Lindsay, who already looked after children, could watch Hannah during the day. To reassure Jason, Timothy explained that Lindsay had a background in early childhood education and was already taking care of another child. Though Lindsay initially hesitated, feeling overwhelmed by the responsibility of looking after 4 children, Timothy persuaded her by pointing out that they needed the extra money. Jason, grateful for the solution, readily accepted the offer. Lindsay, with her warm smile, appeared to be a caring, hard-working mother. Besides babysitting, she also helped her father with various tasks and sold products from a catalog. Jason believed this was the perfect arrangement. Not only would Hannah have a safe place to stay, but she'd also have playmates her own age. Jason and Lindsay agreed on $30 per day for Hannah's care, with Jason dropping her off at 7 a.m. and picking her up after work, depending on how long his shifts were. In July 2017, Hannah spent her first day at Lindsay's house, and within days, Lindsay posted a picture of the little girl on social media, captioned, "Welcome, sweet Hannah," signaling that she was comfortable with her new role. For 8 months, everything seemed to run smoothly. Lindsay looked after Hannah, feeding her, washing her clothes, and even taking her to dance classes. Despite Jason sometimes falling behind on payments, Lindsay never refused to watch Hannah. On Wednesday, March 7, 2018, Lindsay mentioned to Jason that Hannah had fallen off a small toy train but seemed fine. Jason didn't notice anything unusual and assumed it was just a minor accident. The next day, he dropped Hannah off as usual at 7 a.m. Hannah kissed her father goodbye and walked into Lindsay's house as she always did. But shortly after, according to Lindsay, Hannah uttered 2 words, donut and couch, before collapsing and hitting her head on the garage floor. Alarmed, Lindsay placed her on a couch and immediately called Jason, who was still nearby, and then dialed 911. At just past 7 a.m., a young emergency operator answered the call. Lindsay, identifying herself, explained that a 3-year-old girl had collapsed.
I'm so sorry that this happened.
Okay. Is she still unconscious, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
No, she's not unconscious. Her eyes are open and she's like just gasping for air.
What's the matter?
Fucking shock or something.
I don't know what the fuck could be wrong with her.
I don't either. She was fine. Who just walked in the house?
She got up, brushed her teeth,
I don't
and...
understand.
Lindsay, it's okay. They're on the way.
The call lasted 13 minutes, during which Lindsay could be heard urging Hannah to wake up and explaining that the child had fallen the previous day but seemed fine at the time. Jason arrived during the call, his voice also recorded in the frantic moments before paramedics arrived and rushed Hannah to Cincinnati Children's Hospital in critical condition. Police were quick to respond to the scene. For many of the investigators, the timeline was troubling. It was hard to believe that Hannah had been walking and talking moments before, only to suddenly collapse in such a dire state. From the start, detectives were convinced that either Lindsay or Jason was responsible for what had happened. As Hannah fought for her life in the hospital, Jason was interviewed by police. Meanwhile, Lindsay was taken to the station, where she waived her right to an attorney and agreed to speak. As the investigation deepened, officers uncovered that Lindsay had been dealing with personal problems during the months she was caring for the 4 young children. Weeks before the tragic incident with Hannah, Lindsay had experienced a miscarriage, leaving her emotionally unstable. Her relationship with Timothy was also in crisis at the time. As the investigation progressed, officers uncovered troubling details that had previously gone unnoticed, raising red flags. It came to light that during the 8 months Lindsay had been caring for Hannah, there were several alleged accidents that she dismissed as minor. One such incident involved Hannah falling onto gravel while playing outside, leaving her with a deep cut on her chin and a black eye. In another case, Hannah was riding a toy with wheels when the wheels inexplicably came off, causing her to fall and hit her head on the ground. On the morning of the incident, Lindsay's story shifted multiple times, and she contradicted herself. After piecing things together, detectives concluded that Hannah hadn't simply lost consciousness at the house. In reality, the child had spilled ketchup in the bathroom, and in a fit of rage, the caretaker had reacted violently. Lindsay eventually confessed that in her frustration, she shook Hannah, hit her on the head, and pushed her. Following an hour-and-a-half-long interrogation, Lindsay was allowed to go home to her children but decided to visit the hospital to check on Hannah, where she was denied entry. Initially, Jason thought his daughter might have suffered from a brain aneurysm as he heard paramedics suggest this possibility. He believed she would recover. However, the doctor who examined Hannah gave a far more grim explanation. He reported that Hannah had suffered a massive head injury, one consistent with being forcefully thrown against concrete from a significant height. The next morning, Lindsay was arrested. The grim news spread quickly, soon reaching Hannah's devastated father, Jason. His grief turned to fury as he struggled to comprehend how Lindsay could have inflicted such injuries on his little girl. Hannah had undergone several surgeries to relieve pressure on her brain, including one that required part of her skull to be removed. Despite the medical team's best efforts and Hannah's own fight for survival, she passed away 10 days after being admitted to the hospital. Jason, who had set up several GoFundMe accounts to raise money for his daughter's treatment, used the $10,000 collected to pay for Hannah's funeral expenses. The service was held on Thursday, March 22nd, and included an emotional balloon release in the young girl's memory before her burial. After this difficult moment, Jason was cleared of any suspicion following his successful polygraph test. Meanwhile, Lindsay was behind bars as the investigation continued. A video surfaced showing the moment investigators informed Lindsay of Hannah's death. Captured on police cameras, Lindsay later claimed to the media that her confession had been coerced. She accused the detectives of pressuring her to admit that she had struck and shaken Hannah, saying they implied this was a common occurrence in such cases. Lindsay maintained that she had not made the confession willingly and only wanted the ordeal to end so she could return to her children. Based on the evidence, the timeline reconstruction, and Lindsay's own words, she was charged with homicide. The report submitted to the court indicated that Hannah had begun to whimper shortly after Jason dropped her off that day. While playing with a ketchup bottle in the bathroom, Lindsay, enraged, had shaken her, hit her, and thrown her to the ground. More disturbing facts came to light. Authorities revealed that Lindsay had taken it upon herself not just to care for Hannah, but also to discipline her, believing that the child needed structure since her mother was in prison. While this could have been seen as a noble intention, Lindsay's approach to discipline involved physical punishment. She claimed that Jason had agreed to her methods, allowing her to raise Hannah. In April 2019, Lindsay's trial began. Over 8 days, the court heard harrowing testimony. The jury learned how Lindsay had confessed to abusing Hannah to the police. She admitted that she had slapped the child in the days leading up to the incident and violently shook her on the day of her collapse. The defense argued that Lindsay's confession had been coerced by the police, but the court reviewed her interviews and concluded that this was not the case. The officers had read her rights, and she had voluntarily signed waivers. There was no indication in the detective's behavior or language that suggested Lindsay had been forced or threatened into confessing. One of the most painful moments for Hannah's family came when a report from the doctors at Cincinnati Children's Hospital was presented. The report detailed the devastating head trauma Hannah had sustained. It stated that after suffering such a severe brain and skull injury, it would have been impossible for Hannah to walk or talk for more than a few seconds, or at most a couple of minutes, ruling out any possibility that the injury occurred before she entered Lindsay's home. The specialists added that the forceful impact had caused immediate unconsciousness, severe hemorrhaging, and ultimately brain death. During the hearings, the prosecution displayed a photo of Hannah taken just days before March 8th, showing her seated in her car seat, smiling and without any visible injuries. This image starkly contrasted with the critical condition she was in following the incident. Lindsay's defense team tried to divert attention to Jason by showing photos of his messy and dirty apartment, including the mattress where Hannah slept. The images showed a floor covered in clothes, toys, and food remnants, which the defense claimed created an unsafe environment for the child. The defense strategy aimed to portray Jason as a liar, discrediting his testimony. Lindsay's lawyers argued that Jason had been dishonest, as he failed to mention that a friend had been staying at his home during those days. They suggested that, had the police been aware of this person's presence, he might have been a suspect. They also pointed out that Jason lied in his initial statement, claiming that he had taken Hannah to a supermarket on the night of March 7th to buy milk, yet detectives found no milk at his house. However, the court ruled that these defense points were irrelevant. The doctors had confirmed beyond doubt that the injuries causing Hannah's death occurred just moments before her collapse, pointing directly at Lindsay as the responsible party. Jason admitted that his claim about the supermarket visit was due to the confusion and emotional distress he felt while his daughter was in critical condition at the hospital. He expressed anger toward Lindsay's defense team for their remarks, stating that the disorder in his home did not mean he had harmed his daughter. Jason called Lindsay a manipulative liar, asserting that he had never approved of her disciplining Hannah with violence, nor was he aware of it. He also regretted that his daughter hadn't told him about the abuse. However, Hannah had confided in her maternal grandfather, who testified during the trial. He recalled how, even though his daughter Adrian was in prison, he spent Sundays with his granddaughter. On one occasion, he noticed bruises on Hannah's chest. When he asked how she got them, Hannah said it was from her nanny. It was unclear whether he communicated this to Jason, but no steps were taken to protect the child. During another hearing, the prosecution presented Lindsay's internet search history from the day before Hannah's fatal injury. Lindsay had looked up how to treat or hide bruises. The prosecution argued that this was an attempt to conceal the injury she had inflicted on Hannah, while the defense claimed Lindsay suspected Jason of abusing his daughter. Amid the courtroom drama, a media frenzy unfolded outside, with reporters battling for exclusive stories. Around this time, it was revealed that Jason hadn't informed Lindsay that Hannah had been born with a heroin addiction and had hepatitis C, which could have posed a risk to the other children under her care. It was also reported that Jason ignored a March 5th incident in which Lindsay claimed that Hannah refused to participate in dance class due to severe headaches. When asked about these claims, Jason dismissed them, insisting that Lindsay was lying as she always had. In the final hearing, both sides presented their closing arguments. The defense maintained that Hannah's fatal injuries were the result of earlier falls, and Lindsay had already warned Jason about Hannah's previous head injury the day before the collapse. On the other hand, the prosecution argued that Hannah's injuries were far too severe to be the result of a simple childhood accident and were clear evidence of abuse. They asserted that Lindsay, frustrated by the ketchup spill in the bathroom, had resorted to extreme disciplinary measures. At the end of the trial, Hannah's mother, Adrian, submitted a victim impact statement to be read in court. In it, she wrote that the night Hannah died, many lives were forever changed, losing both hope and the future. She expressed how she would never smile the same way again after the loss of her brave daughter, and that she would miss Hannah with every fiber of her being. After 12 hours of deliberation, the jury found Lindsay guilty of murder, involuntary manslaughter, and 4 counts of child endangerment. She was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for at least 18 years. At the conclusion of the trial, Jason had the opportunity to address Lindsay directly. Looking her in the eye, he expressed his anger and said he hoped she would receive the same treatment in prison that she had inflicted on his daughter. Lindsay was then transported to a prison where she was held in solitary confinement, separated from other inmates, as child killers are often targeted in prison. Lindsay's defense team filed an appeal, but in September 2020, her sentence was upheld by the appellate court. They later brought the case to the Ohio Supreme Court, but they were unsuccessful there as well. Her family, left financially drained, had spent $75,000 on her defense. Meanwhile, it was revealed that her former partner, Timothy, had been charged with multiple counts of sexual assault involving minors. He pleaded guilty to a lesser charge and was also sent to prison. Thus, both of the people who had cared for Hannah while Jason worked were now behind bars. Since Hannah's birth, nothing in her life had been secure. In 2022, 3 years after her conviction, Lindsay, now 41, gave a series of interviews from prison. In these interviews, she expressed her longing to hold her daughters, who were now 9 and 10 years old. She reiterated her belief that she didn't deserve to be in prison and continued to deny causing Hannah's fatal injuries. Lindsay, who spoke more in these interviews than she had during her trial, recalled that when she first met Jason, he was dressed in dirty clothes, and Hannah appeared disheveled with her face stained by spaghetti sauce. She emphasized the family's poor financial state and claimed there were signs that something was wrong with Hannah, who had suffered from frequent headaches that worsened in the days before her death and had fallen multiple times. Lindsay also argued that her conviction was influenced by Jason's successful polygraph test and the powerful impact of the autopsy photos presented to the jury. Despite the widespread anger toward her, her family created a social media page titled "Lindsay is Innocent," with the goal of pushing for a review of her case. They remained convinced that the police investigation had been flawed. Additionally, they pointed out that the other child Lindsay cared for had no signs of abuse, as confirmed by medical evaluations. In statements after the trial, Hannah's grandfather expressed deep sorrow over the loss of both his granddaughter and his daughter, Adrian, who passed away on May 1, 2023, at the age of 34. As of October 2024, when this investigation concluded, Lindsay remained incarcerated in a maximum security facility where she helped other inmates earn their high school diplomas and assisted them in preparing release reports. She continued to hold on to hope that she would be free before her daughters stopped recognizing her. For his part, Jason summarized his pain by saying that he had trusted Lindsay to care for his daughter, never imagining that she would become the target of repeated abuse, culminating in her death. He said he would never be able to forgive her and hoped that she would not only face human justice, but also be held accountable in the afterlife. In his view, Lindsay was exactly where she belonged, and he wished for her to spend every remaining day of her life behind bars. Thanks for tuning in to Unreal True Crime. If you're intrigued by mysteries from around the world, check out our new channel, Latin Crimes, where we dive into the gripping true crime stories of Latin America. Don't miss out. Subscribe now for more thrilling investigations. In August 2013, the quiet town of Bakersfield, California, was rocked by the shocking discovery of Todd Chance's lifeless body in a remote almond grove. A devoted father and husband, Todd's murder left investigators scrambling to find answers. As they dug deeper, what seemed like a straightforward case quickly turned into something far more complex. With each clue, the mystery only deepened, leaving one pressing question: who wanted Todd Chance dead, and why? Todd Chance, born on March 10, 1968, to Diana and Travis Chance, grew up on a farm in the small town of Shafter, near Bakersfield. Alongside his younger brother Scott, Todd learned the value of hard work at a young age, helping his parents raise livestock like pigs and horses. He was known as a true cowboy, often seen donning his cowboy hat and boots, while off-road riding with his father was one of his favorite pastimes. As a teenager, Todd developed a passion for race cars. His parents gifted him a blue Mustang Cobra when he reached driving age, and it quickly became part of his identity. With his rugged charm and sporty car, Todd never struggled for female attention. His mother, Diana, often joked that he was a magnet for girls, who would leave notes on his car windshield asking him to call them. However, despite the attention, Todd's heart was captured by a young woman named Jania. Jania worked as a cashier at a local pharmacy. Having been through a brief and unhappy marriage that ended due to her ex-husband's infidelity, she was now a single mother to a little girl named Jessica. After her divorce, Jania hoped that her next relationship would be with someone who valued and cherished her. When she first met Todd, who had recently started working as a security guard at the pharmacy, she saw him as a ladies' man. However, after getting to know him, her perception changed. Todd wasn't the player she thought he was. He was kind, caring, and sincere, and he soon fell deeply in love with Jania. He also embraced her daughter, Jessica, treating her as his own. Their love story blossomed quickly, and in 1996, Todd and Jania got married. They expanded their family with 2 more daughters, Samantha and Sarah. Despite their busy lives, their relationship thrived, and Jania worked multiple jobs while dreaming of earning a degree in education. As Todd pursued his passion for vehicles by becoming a truck driver, Jania continued working toward her goal of becoming an educator. Her hard work paid off, and after starting as a school secretary, she eventually became the principal of Fairview Elementary School. Todd, who had spent over 15 years in the trucking industry, was proud of his wife's success, and their family enjoyed the stability her new position brought. By the summer of 2013, the family was living comfortably, able to afford luxurious vacations and provide a good life for their daughters. They had just returned from an unforgettable trip to San Francisco and Las Vegas, which Samantha and Sarah described as the best summer of their lives. Sadly, this joyful time was soon overshadowed by tragedy. On the morning of August 25, 2013, at 9:27 a.m., the police received a call from workers at an almond grove located about 15 miles from Bakersfield. They had discovered a body. Emergency responders quickly identified the victim as 45-year-old Todd Chance, who still had his wallet and identification on him. His mobile phone was found nearby, and tire tracks indicated that a vehicle had been driven away from the scene. Todd had been shot twice in the chest at close range, and investigators believed one of the bullets had pierced his arm as he tried to defend himself. While Todd's wallet and phone were intact, his prized black 2011 Mustang was missing, leading detectives to initially suspect a carjacking. The investigation kicked off immediately, as authorities sought to piece together how Todd had ended up in such a remote location and why someone would have taken his life. In 2013, residents of a local neighborhood in Bakersfield, California, were puzzled when they saw a sleek black Mustang abandoned in an area notorious for gang activity and illegal drug trade. It seemed out of place for such an expensive car to be left in a district known for high crime rates. Concerned, they reported it to the police, and investigators quickly arrived at the scene. The car was unlocked, and the keys were lying on the floor. Detectives also discovered a revolver with 2 spent casings inside, making them suspect it was the murder weapon. Yet, leaving the gun in the car of the victim, Todd Chance, struck them as unusual. A closer forensic investigation revealed fingerprints and DNA inside the Mustang that belonged to Todd's wife, Jania Chance. Her prints were found on the driver's side door and gear shift, which could be explained by her being his spouse and likely using the car at times. However, it raised questions for the detectives, especially since their initial theory of a carjacking didn't align with the evidence. Why would someone steal a car, kill its owner, and then leave it unlocked with the keys inside? The more investigators uncovered, the more the situation suggested this wasn't a random act, but rather a deliberate attack. Todd cherished his Mustang. It was like a fourth child to him, a symbol of pride and joy. He would never have left it in such a suspicious area by choice. The evidence began to suggest that someone had intentionally left the vehicle in this remote spot to confuse the investigation. The coroner's report further complicated matters, indicating that Todd's death was a calculated execution. He had been shot twice at close range, and either bullet wound could have been fatal. Todd likely died within minutes of the attack, and his body was dumped later at the almond grove where it was discovered. Adding another layer to the mystery, Todd's shoes were completely clean, despite the dusty terrain of the almond grove where his body was found. If he had walked there, his sneakers would have been dusty, which strongly suggested he had been killed elsewhere and brought to the grove afterward. Later that day, the police arrived at the Chance family home to deliver the devastating news of Todd's death. His wife was calm and composed, offering the detectives her full cooperation. She provided them with phone records, bank statements, and a timeline of events from the morning Todd left the house, telling her he was going to a gun show with his father. According to her, Todd left around 7:30 or 8 a.m., while she remained home working on her computer. Their 2 daughters, Samantha and Sarah, confirmed seeing their mother working on the laptop around 9:30 or 10 a.m. When asked to check Todd's gun safe, Jania discovered that his pistol was missing. She found it odd that Todd would have taken the gun, though she speculated he might have planned to trade or sell it at the gun show. The fact that a gun was found in the Mustang made it seem like Todd had been shot with his own weapon. However, when detectives spoke with Todd's father, Travis, a contradiction emerged. Travis denied any knowledge of a gun show and claimed he hadn't seen his son that day. They had no plans to meet up, which was entirely different from what Jania had told the police. This inconsistency raised new questions. Was Jania lying, or had Todd lied to his wife about his plans that morning? Investigators then turned their attention to the supposed gun show. It was real and did take place that morning, but it was located on the opposite side of Bakersfield, far from where Todd's body was found. This further discredited the story of Todd heading to the event. As detectives dug deeper into Todd's phone records, they stumbled upon an unexpected discovery: intimate photos of his ex-fiancée, Carrie Williams. Accompanying the images were flirtatious text messages exchanged between Todd and Carrie, discussing personal matters, including Todd's wife. This revelation shifted the focus of the investigation, as the text suggested Todd may have been rekindling a relationship with his former lover. Jania's calm demeanor during the police's initial visit and her inconsistent account of the events that morning now seemed more suspicious. Detectives theorized that Todd might have been planning to meet Carrie instead of going to the gun show, which could have triggered a jealous confrontation between him and his wife. The investigators began considering the possibility that Jania had discovered Todd's secret correspondence with Carrie and, in a fit of rage, killed her husband. Interestingly, Todd's relationship with Carrie predated his marriage to Jania. While they had broken up on bad terms and hadn't spoken for a long time, they reconnected in 2012, just a year before Todd's death. This newfound connection gave Jania a motive and cast her in a darker light, making her a prime suspect in her husband's murder. The police were initially unsure about Carrie Williams' potential involvement, so they arranged an interview to better understand her connection to Todd. Aside from the intimate photos and messages, Carrie provided a solid alibi. During the time of the crime, she was at a museum with her daughter. Her presence was verified by a parking ticket. Carrie explained that she and Todd had reconnected online after many years, exchanging messages and photos, but they hadn't met in person. With her alibi confirmed, Carrie was ruled out as a suspect. The detectives, still suspicious of Todd's wife, decided to avoid making accusations without concrete proof. Their persistence eventually paid off, as new, unsettling evidence came to light. They already had the victim's phone, gun, and car, but none had revealed foreign fingerprints or DNA. Determined, the police returned to the street where Todd's Mustang had been abandoned. This time, they canvassed the neighborhood, hoping a resident might have noticed something. Several witnesses reported seeing a woman near the car that morning, someone they didn't recognize. The woman, described as middle-aged, was wearing a baseball cap that concealed her hair and large sunglasses that covered most of her face. She exited the black Mustang and walked away. Detectives also identified a few surveillance cameras in the area, and upon reviewing the footage, they saw a figure matching the witness descriptions. The person had a red backpack and carried a plastic bag. There was initial confusion over the suspect's gender, but the video and witness reports confirmed the figure was a woman. The detectives traced her movements through additional surveillance footage. After leaving the Mustang, she entered a nearby fast food restaurant where she changed clothes and shoes in the restroom. In the plastic bag, officers noticed something resembling a container lid, possibly disinfectant wipes, which she likely used to clean the car. After the wardrobe change, the woman was seen near a waste container, making a motion as though discarding something. A camera captured her using a payphone to call a taxi shortly afterward. By tracking the footage, detectives noted the taxi dropped off a passenger at the Chance family home around 10 a.m. Earlier footage had shown Todd's black Mustang driving toward the almond grove at around 8 a.m., where his body was later found. The car was seen returning toward the city at about 8:30 a.m., and again near the area where it was abandoned at 8:57 a.m., right when Todd's body was discovered. Although the surveillance footage strongly suggested Jania was involved, the low quality of the video made it difficult to positively identify her. 4 days after Todd's death, police asked Jania to come to the station to retrieve her husband's car. She arrived with her father-in-law, Travis. The two were questioned separately and shown the surveillance footage. Travis couldn't identify the woman in the footage, stating that he didn't know anyone who would have needed to take Todd's car and abandon it. When Jania was questioned, she also claimed that she did not recognize the person in the video. However, When detectives pressed her further about the possibility that the woman was her, she refused to answer more questions and immediately requested a lawyer. At that point, the police arrested her on suspicion of murdering her husband. Her arrest shocked many who knew the family, splitting the community. Some believed she had killed Todd, while others thought the police had made a mistake. Her daughters were among those who stood by her, convinced of her innocence. While the community debated, detectives searched the Chance family home, confiscating all electronic devices to look for further evidence. However, it would take time to analyze everything. Despite the footage and evidence pointing toward Jania, the district attorney's office felt it wasn't enough to press charges. The poor quality of the footage and the lack of concrete evidence made it difficult to build a case that would hold up in court. After 5 days in custody, Jania was released, and to the surprise of many, she was even given her late husband's Mustang back. Though Jania was freed, she remained the prime suspect. The picture-perfect family, celebrating 17 years of marriage, with well-behaved children and having just returned from a vacation, was now in turmoil. No one had seen any major signs of trouble in their relationship, which only deepened the mystery. While the evidence seemed to point to Jania, proving her guilt in court was another matter entirely. The case, for the time being, stalled. However, the investigators refused to let the case go cold. Over the next several years, they worked tirelessly to gather additional evidence, determined to hold Jania accountable for what they believed was her role in Todd's murder. Eventually, they succeeded. During the Chance family's vacation in Las Vegas, they visited a crime-themed exhibition based on episodes from a well-known TV show in the U.S. At first glance, this visit seemed harmless. However, as the investigation into Todd's murder unfolded, detectives noted eerie similarities between the cases featured at the exhibition and the details of Todd's murder. One of the criminal cases showcased how a suspect used a payphone to avoid being tracked by their mobile phone. Another example involved a woman who killed her husband and then changed her clothes and shoes to avoid leaving microscopic blood evidence behind. Exactly what the perpetrator did in Todd's case, as seen in the surveillance footage. It appeared that Jania might have drawn inspiration from this exhibition on how to commit the crime and cover her tracks. But this wasn't the only incriminating information the police gathered. Her fingerprints were found on Todd's car, specifically on the driver's door and gear shift. When confronted, she insisted she had never driven the car because it had a manual transmission, raising suspicion about how her fingerprints ended up there. Investigators also unearthed surveillance footage from a few weeks before Todd's death, showing Jania in a supermarket asking a salesperson where she could find a payphone. This was odd since Jania had 2 mobile phones, leading the police to question why she needed a payphone. Furthermore, Jania's claim that she had been at home working on her computer the morning of the murder didn't hold up. Forensic analysis revealed that there was no activity on the family's computer until 11 a.m., meaning that she had plenty of time to carry out the crime. The detectives shared the surveillance footage with Todd and his wife's daughters. The eldest, Jessica, initially identified her mother in the footage, even recognizing a red backpack they had at home. However, she later retracted her statement, realizing it could implicate her mother. Sarah and Samantha, the younger daughters, insisted that their mother was home at the time, fully believing in their mother's innocence. Despite the daughters' unwavering support, detectives were convinced that Jania had a motive. One possibility was her discovery of Todd's affair with his ex-fiancée, Carrie. The second, more concrete motive was the $500,000 life insurance policy in Todd's name. As the primary breadwinner, Jania faced the potential of paying alimony if she and Todd divorced, making a separation less appealing. In the end, she managed to receive a large portion of the insurance payout, though Todd's parents, Travis and Diana, fought in court to secure funds for their granddaughters. After years of gathering evidence, 49-year-old Leslie Jania Chance was arrested and charged with Todd's murder in 2016. The trial, which began in December of that year, painted a chilling picture of the events on that fateful morning. Jania and Todd were seen leaving their home together, with Todd driving the car. At some point during the drive, Jania allegedly pulled a gun on him. Todd, attempting to defend himself, stretched out his hand, but the bullet pierced his palm and chest. Jenny then fired a second shot, killing him instantly. Afterward, she dragged Todd's body into the almond grove and drove away, abandoning the car in a rough neighborhood. She took precautions to wipe the car clean with disinfectant wipes, leaving behind the gun and the keys. However, her plan backfired when local residents promptly reported the abandoned Mustang to the police. Her lawyers tried to lean on the alibi provided by her daughters, but the fact that Jania herself had claimed the girls were asleep while she worked on the computer weakened their defense. The lack of activity on the computer until late morning further undermined her claims. During the trial, she maintained her innocence. She claimed to love her husband and denied knowing anything about his virtual affair with Carrie Williams. She also insisted that she didn't need Todd's life insurance money. In a surprising twist, she argued that she had poor eyesight and never wore contact lenses, suggesting that the woman seen in the surveillance footage couldn't have been her because she wouldn't have been able to see clearly with sunglasses on. However, the prosecution presented evidence that Jania had ordered contact lenses just a month before Todd's murder, exposing another lie. On January 31, 2020, the jury found Jania guilty of murdering her husband. The verdict shocked not only Jania, but also her family, especially her daughters, who had never believed their mother was capable of such a crime. In September 2020, she was sentenced to 50 years to life in prison, 25 years for the murder, and an additional 25 years for using a firearm in the commission of the crime. Despite the conviction, she continues to proclaim her innocence, giving interviews in which she asserts that she was wrongfully convicted. In January 2023, she appealed the verdict, but it was upheld. She won't be eligible for parole until 2041. Thanks for tuning in to Unreal True Crime. If you're intrigued by mysteries from around the world, check out our new channel, Latin Crimes, where we dive into the gripping true crime stories of Latin America. Don't miss out. Subscribe now for more thrilling investigations.